Sweet Oz. If you told my younger self I'd one day be booking a trip just to visit wicked filming locations, I'd have asked what kind of sorcery you were under and where I could get some. But here we are. My name is Ashley and I work in film and television, which basically means I cry over good lighting and get unreasonably excited about location permits. I've spent my fair share of time on backlots and studios, and my personal favorite, real-world destinations, the kind of tangible spaces you can walk through, get lost in, and feel the story come to life around you. Now, mix that with my enthusiasm for travel and my unwavering 2003 love of the Wicked musical and books, and you've got the perfect recipe for this very specific kind of adventure. Join me on a little love letter to production as I take you across England to explore all the Wicked movie spots I could find. But it's not just about what ended up on camera, it's also about the towns and communities that helped bring the land of Oz to life. So if you're a fellow theater kid, a film buff, or just planning your next UK trip, grab your broom or bubble and let's head down that yellow brick road. Not well versed in left lane driving, I opted to spare myself the stress and the potential embarrassment by relying on England's vast railway and bus network for my 6-day stay in the region. My first stop was King's Lynn, home to the infamous Munchkinland tulip field. Tulips, though bold and beloved, bloom for just a few fleeting weeks each spring, and honestly, catching them at their peak was the spark that kicked off this entire escapade. Years ago, production designer Nathan Crowley and location manager Adam Richards partnered up with local farmers here in this corner of the country to plant nearly 9 million tulips, bringing to life the colorful aesthetic of our Munchkin folk. Unfortunately for fans, I learned that the original tulip field used in Wicked has since been replaced with an entirely different crop and is not open to visitors. But in an effort to honor what once was, I found something even better, a tulip field just up the road, managed by those same farmers, raising money for charity. Every year, Norfolk Tulips opens its gates to the general public, raising funds for Tapping House, a local hospice providing free care for people with life-limiting illnesses. Grab a ticket and a time slot, and you're free to wander the fields at your own leisure, soaking in the sheer delight of frolicking amongst the flowers. And if I can give you an insider tip, try to book the earliest time slot of the day. Better photos, smaller crowd. With nearly the entire day ahead of me, I opted to explore a bit more of this idyllic countryside before continuing the Great Wicked Tour. After all, you've got to admire how far a production will go just to find the perfect patch of farmland, so you might as well see what makes the community at large tick. Just a 3-mile, incredibly relaxing stroll from the tulips is one of the most notable attractions in the area. Sandringham House is the private retreat of King Charles and Queen Camilla and has served as such for over 5 generations of British monarchs. Traditionally, it's a place where the royals enjoy their Christmas holiday. The property is enormous, with beautifully crafted gardens, footpaths ebbing and flowing over the gentle curves of the earth, and what can only be described as a strikingly lavish country home. If Galinda Upland of the Gregory Maguire novel were here, I imagine she'd be captivated by the ornate Jacobean architecture and carefully curated landscapes. Elphaba Throp, on the other hand, might roll her eyes at the sheer opulence of it all. I found myself wandering in awe of the property, and after a brief tour inside, sorry, no photos were allowed, I spent the remainder of my time simply taking in the serenity of the land. Like the Tulips for Tapping event, a visit to Sandringham House does require a reservation, but I'd say it's certainly worth the visit if you can swing it. As for King's Lynn Town Centre, a mere 15-minute drive from Sandringham, I had the opportunity to explore all its offerings after I checked into my accommodation yesterday afternoon. I booked myself at the Duke's Head Hotel, which I found to be generally cozy and clean, save for a slightly distracting late-night party at a nearby pub. Sorry, that's my grumpy jet lag complaining. But if you're hoping to be in the heart of this historic port district and close to the tulip fields, you can't go wrong with this hotel. Serving up a strong maritime heritage, King's Lynn has been one of England's most important players in trade along the waterways. My first hour or so was spent perusing some of the more modern thoroughfares, but a deeper stroll through the town revealed old merchant homes, sea-sprayed facades, and the general taste of salt in the air. An even closer inspection unveiled the increasingly peculiar characteristics undoubtedly carved over the centuries. But more than anything, and especially on a late Sunday afternoon, King's Lynn came off as a fairly quiet residential town. Fast forward through the next morning exploring tulips and country homes, and you'll find me back on the train heading into central London. The Wicked adventure continues with a visit to Hampstead. With its bustling high street, charming cobbled lanes, and postcard-worthy homes, the moment I arrived in Hampstead, I had the overwhelming suspicion it would be hard for me to leave. Leading up to the release of Wicked Part 1, cast and crew were dropping behind-the-scenes photos and interviews discussing their time in London during filming, and more than once I caught mention of their days spent off-camera hanging out in Hampstead. Then, in March 2025, Ariana Grande dropped a song called Hampstead, which pretty much sealed the deal for me. I had to see what this neighborhood was all about. In the late afternoon glow, I instantly melted into the vibes of this trendy London village. There was an almost indescribable energy to it, a feeling of pure content and, dare I say, happiness? Without really thinking, I ended up on the Heath, a wild park of woodland and meadows extending nearly 800 acres. I wandered until my feet hurt, taking in the seemingly endless trails and ever-changing vistas. If some of the cast and crew did indeed stay in Hampstead, I could see just how beneficial a stroll through this park would be after a long day of filming. It felt like the perfect place to unwind and recharge. Closing out the night, I reserved a table at the Hollybush, a centuries-old pub nestled just a stone's throw away from the Heath. It's said that the cast turned up here on a number of different occasions, and it's only after arriving home and digging a little deeper that I found out Ariana, Bowen, and I were sat at neighboring tables. The place was absolutely just as adorable as you would imagine, with character around every corner and cozy decor taking you in like a warm blanket. To start, I indulged in bread and garlic butter, and then I moved on to cured salmon and a caramelized shallot and potato tart, all washed down with a smooth white wine. It was the perfect way to end my evening in Hampstead, full, content, and already under the spell of this magical little slice of London. The next morning was a foggy flurry of activity as I boarded a train, still trying to figure out how I'd even find the next set locations, arguably some of the most important ones. Always game for a little detective work, I combed through numerous interviews, articles, and aerial images to pin down a random field somewhere in the middle of the English countryside. I definitely wasn't surprised to be the only one hopping off the train at Cheddington Station, greeted by cows in the distance and the oddly nostalgic scent of fresh-cut grass and manure. Where am I? I walked along the road for about 25 minutes, avoiding probing glances and generally trying to stay out of traffic, but overall, I did come to enjoy the vast openness of the landscape. And when a car wasn't buzzing by, I could take in the scent of wildflowers and the sounds of a trickling waterway just beyond the hedges. One of the most helpful clues I found was a production photo showing a long canal cutting through open fields. I lined that up with Google Maps and ultimately pinned the spot I'm standing at now, the location once home to the sets of Shiz University, Munchkinland, and the Emerald City. It quickly became clear that the only way I was going to explore it would be from Elfie's perspective. The field is enormous, lush, and, as you can see, in the middle of nowhere. Pops of sunlight drifted over the landscape, illuminating the most vibrant greenery against the patchy sky, a vacant terrain once bustling with all things wicked. I'm not sure why there wasn't a temporary flight restriction enforced during production, and I certainly wouldn't have done this myself, but I have some fellow YouTubers to thank for allowing me to use their footage of what once stood on this very land. From the massive Shiz University set to the lively streets of Munchkinland and the grandeur of the Emerald City, it must have felt like their own immersive campus. Why did they choose this field, though? Was it due to its remoteness, or maybe just its size? Was the owner more willing than others, or was there some sort of tax incentive for this area? I'll never know the answer, but if you'd like to be awestruck by the level of detail that went into designing Oz here in England, look up Nathan Crowley's interview with Architectural Digest. It is fascinating. The blank canvas sprawled out beneath my drone gave me a feeling similar to exploring an abandoned building. You can sense the history of the place, an energy of its past life infused with endless stories to be told. For me, it simply left me wishing there was some way I could wander the Shiz dormitories or peruse bookstands in the Emerald City, places that once were, that exist no more. Just a short walk away was an unassuming drive, once serving as the main entry point to the production field. Today, it's literally just the entrance to a local business. Another 25 minutes up the road and I arrived at Ivinghoe with the hopes of grabbing lunch. I popped into the Rose and Crown pub, finally christening my UK trip with a classic dish. And damn if this was not the best fish and chips I've ever had. For such a peaceful town, I can't imagine what it was like to suddenly become the backdrop for flying monkeys and Ozian shenanigans. As a visitor today, you'd never know the world that once stood here, and perhaps that's the true enchantment of it all. A whole fantasy realm conjured up, lived in, and then quietly folded back into the everyday. All right, just got back from my day at Shiz. And now for a night in the West End. I know this doesn't qualify as a filming location, but to go with the theme here, we have tickets tonight to see Wicked, and it is my third time seeing it here in London, although it's been over a decade since I've seen the musical on stage at all. So I'm very excited to get a refresher, especially after seeing the film, and just to have a night of fun and relaxation, and we'll pick up the actual filming locations tomorrow. I was first introduced to Wicked at 16, back in 2003, when my parents gifted me the original cast recording CD. I fell in love with the music before I even fully understood the story, and it would be 2 more years before I finally saw the show on Broadway. To say it had an impact on me is an understatement. There was something in this musical that I deeply connected with. The characters, the story, the songs, they became a source of comfort during some of life's hardest moments and a soundtrack to many of its best. And maybe my love for these witches goes back even further than I realize. In 2006, as a broke college student, my friends and I scraped together enough money to fly to London to see Idina Menzel reprise her role for the West End opening. Since then, I've seen the Broadway production 5 times, read the books, and indulged in more than a little fan fiction. For those of you who've been waiting for this movie for decades, I've been right there with you. And to John M. Chu, thank you for honoring the material so beautifully. So it only seemed appropriate to celebrate the stage show in the midst of this rather unique adventure I'm on this week. And I could not be more excited to step back into the Apollo Victoria Theatre. The next day was arguably my favorite of the trip, kicking off with a 1-hour train ride to the South Coast. The sun was shining, there was a buzz in the air, and as I arrived at Brighton Station, it felt like, if I listened closely enough, I could hear Dr. Dillamond launching into a lecture just down the hall. And it would make sense for him to be in town. After all, this city holds one of the closest ties to Shiz University I could find, with architectural inspiration drawn from the Royal Pavilion. In 1815, George, the Prince Regent, who would later become King George IV, commissioned John Nash to transform his seaside villa into a lavish pleasure palace of foreign influence. Known for his eccentric tastes and passion for the arts, George's decadent home is a true standout in the community and has undergone many iterations and uses in the 200 years since. Visitors are free to roam the gardens and can even join a ticketed tour inside. The Shiz set design pulled from many influences, but the onion-shaped domes and oval windows were clear nods to the royal pavilion. It was easy to imagine Galinda inside busying herself with sorcery practice or laying out an outfit for that night's Ozda soiree. And I have to say, for having spent a better part of yesterday just staring out at an empty field, it was a welcome shift to have something concrete to admire, a physical connection to the fictional world I've been chasing all week. With a few hours to spare, I made my way down to the water, greeted by a casual crowd enjoying a light breeze along the shorefront. This is an obvious resort town with plenty of bars, restaurants, shops, and so much more, and I felt lucky to be here in the early spring indulging in the atmosphere. Honoring the Bright of Brighton, the city is dotted with rainbow flags and colorful streets. At first, I thought the bold palette was just a nod to Brighton's name, but the longer I looked around, the more I started wondering, wait, is everyone gay here? Slower than I care to admit, I eventually came to learn that I was standing in the unofficial LGBTQ+ capital of the United Kingdom. It was so much fun, energetic, quirky, and above all, inclusive. And honestly, if you've read any of the Wicked books or picked up on some vibes in the musical or movie, Brighton is just a modern-day Oz. Before leaving, I grabbed a delicious Japanese lunch at Pompoko before heading back to the station, ready to see what other wonders the South Coast had in store. Located in East Sussex, the quiet town of Seaford sits at the doorstep of the iconic Seven Sisters South Downs National Park. It's where I've chosen to stay for the night in a room over the Wellington pub, and where I'm embarking on a hike to Elphaba's The Wizard and I cliffside. Famous for its chalk sea cliffs, rolling green hills, and meandering waterways, the Seven Sisters landscape is undeniably scenic. Met by the endless sea, there's a serenity to this place that felt hard to define. The park welcomes visitors from all around the world and maintains numerous trails for exploration.
It doesn't look that steep in this video, but it is all uphill. That's the start of the cliffs over there. You can see some folks at the edge. That's where I'm heading to.
Standing atop the hillside, I enjoyed 30 minutes simply taking in the sights. What captivated me most were the colors, a highly contrasting natural environment. From the sky occasionally illuminating with warm beams of sunlight, to the almost Caribbean blue ocean water butting up against the stark white rocks. The green of the grassland at once seemed out of place and as if it belonged all at the same time. Another 20 minutes or so was spent imagining how they filmed Elphaba's final shots running up to the ledge in her song. I had fun playing with my own camera trying to recreate the framing without dangling myself off the cliffside. Now, you already know I like a little detective work, and if you don't love a behind-the-scenes spoiler, skip ahead in this video because this took some serious digging for me to uncover. It turns out the production team recreated the cliffside back in that field near Cheddington Station. I somehow managed to find one still image of this and matched it up to a drone video flying over the field during filming. I'm guessing they did this to A, keep Cynthia Erivo from risking a 500-foot plunge, and B, have more camera control since that final shot would seem to require a crane or drone if they filmed here. Could it be a blend of both of these locations to form that sequence? Absolutely. I can't say for sure if Cynthia actually sang here, but we can at least agree that the cliffs definitely inspired the look of The Wizard and I. Either way, I can confirm the production team was indeed in this area because our next film site is just a few minutes away, barring traffic.
We have a bit of a horse jam. You think they will let me through, or are they going to escape with me? Unclear. You are beautiful. Okay. Coming through. Okay, got it. Thank you for all being so polite. Okay, we have made it to the other side. Now we're gonna go find Glinda.
Cutting through a valley between the Seven Sisters sits the Cuckmere River, famously used as the entryway to Shiz. Okay, so I brought with me these two pictures. I know I'm a complete dork, but I brought these for reference to see if I can find this. And I'm starting to think that these two elements don't exist in exactly the same place. Yes, these are the cliffs that I was just at, but this river doesn't flow with a view of the cliffs in that way. They would be perpendicular to this, I think. I haven't found anything that looks like this, so I'm assuming this is VFX. But I'm trying to find this bend in the river, which I think I'm coming up to. It's very hard to tell from the ground. I need some sort of drone view, but I'm hesitant to launch my drone when there are cows and horses around. I don't want to disturb them. So we'll continue walking and see what we can find. Okay, I see a little path up there. I'm gonna see if I can get a better view of this river. Okay, so this is definitely the crook of the river that Glinda Upland sailed down on her way to Shiz. And it's very close to the road, so if you're coming to visit, it's just off the road, park in the visitor center, and it's like a 10-minute walk. That's about it. It's very cool to see. I wish I could fly my drone in this area, but out of respect to the animals, I'm not going to. Also, I think this is a national park, so I'm sure drones aren't even allowed, but that's okay. I'm really glad I found the spot. Very cool to see how close Elphaba's cliffside is to Glinda's arrival to Shiz. So there you go. And just like that, the day wound down with a beachside sunset, a stroll through Seaford's sleepy town center, and a simple dinner at the only place still open. Quiet, unassuming, and oddly perfect. The next morning, I rose early to soak in a few more minutes of this peaceful town. One last breath of sea air before heading north to wrap up this wicked tour. Perhaps even more difficult to get to via public transportation than that empty field from days ago was a trek out to Hankley Common in Hampstead. I did try to make the journey a little more fun by booking an Airbnb in a nearby town famous for another movie, which you'll see in a future video. Any guesses? Hankley Common is located in the Surrey Hills and is a well-known nature reserve occasionally used for movie making, but otherwise enjoyed as a recreational park and military training space. Thanks to a bit of research and a phone call to the Surrey Film Office, I was able to confirm that Wicked did film here, and it included scenes for Part 2, Wicked for Good. As of the release of this video, we are still a month out from the premiere of that movie, so I have no idea what specifically was shot here, but I can tell you that there was a yellow brick road and paparazzi photos of Cynthia Erivo and a broom. After an exceedingly long bus ride, I was dropped off at a graveyard, which was really confusifying, and left to find my way into the common. Fortunately, it was just about a 20-minute walk before I entered the woods and moved through the heathland, searching for, well, I didn't exactly know what I was looking for, but I can tell you that I treated it like a bit of a treasure hunt. There are 2 aerial photos of Wicked filming in Hankley Common. I lined up the trails with what I could make out on Google Maps and pinned the location of the yellow brick road. Pausing at a rather suspicious sign, I only proceeded forward when I saw a few other folks out enjoying their mountain bikes. I guess it was okay to be here? One of the first things I noticed was how muddy some of the paths were. I wondered how difficult getting production equipment and personnel in here must have been. Hopefully they had decent weather. The second thing I noticed was the military. I passed several men and women in uniform, and no one seemed to care that I was wandering alone through the woods. Another sign that it was okay for me to be here, I think. When I finally stumbled upon the wide open space I had imagined, I noticed a few folks out and about seemingly surveying the area, possibly doing some location scouting for an upcoming movie. Other than that, it was completely vacant, and I took that as my opportunity to explore the common, standing on the exact spot of the yellow brick road. It was beautiful in an almost desolate kind of way. Aside from the occasional chirp of a bird, the silence of soft winds traversing the plain rendered a slightly eerie ambiance, one that, if I hadn't seen any other humans along the way, would have left me feeling profoundly alone. The mood was fleeting as I caught sight of the military marching down the hillside in my direction. While it was obviously just part of a training exercise, it was also my cue to leave, grateful to have found a spot I knew very little about. After chasing down train connections, frolicking in tulip fields, dodging traffic, and stumbling through the forest, I suppose I've stretched my film sleuthing muscles enough this trip. This whole journey ended up being way more than just a location hunt. It gave me such an appreciation for the production team behind Wicked and the worlds that are built when we tell stories well. The location choices were not only visually stunning, but also remarkably thoughtful. The blending of practical sets with natural landscapes brought something magical to life in a way that only good filmmaking can. If you are inspired to retrace these steps yourself, I've linked a pinned map in the description of this video that marks each of the filming locations that I visited. Just be warned, you might need hiking boots, a sense of direction, and maybe a backup plan when the horses block your path. But I promise, whether you're here for the musical, the movie, or just the adventure, there's something pretty wonderful waiting in England.